Number 10. Undead Brother Voodoo. This version of Brother Voodoo hails from Earth 666, ooh spooky, where he is part of the Undead Avengers team. While still technically a hero, he's also still technically a monster. The Avengers of Earth 666 are all considered members of the Undead, with each of them technically being some kind of monster, some version of Undead, if you will. Jericho Drum in this universe appears to be some kind of poltergeist-like ghost from his appearance here. I don't know if he's specifically a poltergeist, I just think of him that way because of his glowiness. I don't know, reminds me of the movie Poltergeist. This team, including the ghostly Brother Voodoo, make their first appearance in issue number 33 of the Secret Avengers series, where they tangle with Secret Avengers members Captain Britain and Clint Barton's Hawkeye of Earth 616.
Number 9. Groot. Before he was the mainstay lovable space ent in Guardians of the Galaxy with a raccoon-shaped compatriot, Groot was actually an evil, monstrous tree. He first appeared in Tales to Astonish number 13 in 1960. The tagline in the comic itself was, quote, "Where Groot walks, death follows." He was also entirely obscure before being thrust into the pop culture fandom when Marvel decided to turn their C-list team, Guardians of the Galaxy, into a phenomenally massive success. He was originally a throwaway monster, and his original comic, before 2012, was worth $2,868, which isn't small by any means, but after the movies premiered, it was worth $19,000. In the comic, Groot belongs to a species called Floral Colossus, although they're also just called Groots too. During his early life, the Floral Colossi rule over Planet X, and Groot was an outcast amongst his people. He became friends with the inferior species called the Undergrowth, a fungi-like species also on the planet. Groot is eventually forced to flee his homeworld after he kills another Colossus while defending an Undergrowth. Before the movies, Groot also appeared in 2 other comics, one being The Incredible Hulk, where he more so resembles his original appearance rather than the huggable tree we know today. The Hulk comic released in 1976, and then lastly he was in Annihilation Conquest number 6 in 2008. It was the first appearance of Groot as his modern rendition, smaller, skinnier, a bit more approachable than the Godzilla-style tree we knew before. He also joined the Guardians of the Galaxy lineup in this comic alongside Star-Lord, Drax the Destroyer, and Rocket Raccoon.
Number 8. Rune King Thor. Thor is an incredibly powerful character who has been around forever, as I'm sure everyone knows. But after Odin passed away, Thor became the king of Asgard, and he sucked. He did a lot of unking-like things. But to fix all that, he uses time travel to go back and just reverse it all. But now Loki has orchestrated a whole thing, resurrecting Surtur and Ragnarok, creating new hammers and attacking Asgard, ending the lives of many significant Asgardians and just being a real pain in the bum. Thor is visited by the personification of the Odin Force in the form of a little kid who tells Thor he needs to gain wisdom. So to do that, Thor follows after his late father and goes to the Well of Mimir, sacrificing both of his eyes and drinking from the well in order to gain the knowledge that Ragnarok is an endless cycle. He then goes to Yggdrasil, the World Tree, and hangs himself there until he actually passes away. Doing this imbues him with rune magic, which gives him knowledge of the future and the past and the ability to control the present, and he's saved by Odin's spirit before his soul can be claimed by Hela. He returns to Earth with both the Odin Force and this new rune magic. Using these forces, he is able to erase the man god from existence with a single touch. That's one of the most powerful beings in the multiverse that even Odin was afraid of. He defeats all the forces of Loki, including Loki himself. He recreates his hammer and uses it to literally destroy reality with a single swing.
Number 7. Marvel Zombies. It's an entire pantheon of characters, from Spider-Man to Hulk to Captain America, but all zombified. The zombie versions of beloved heroes were first introduced in the pages of Ultimate Fantastic Four and became instant hits. In typical Marvel marketing genius, Marvel spun the zombies into their own book written by none other than Robert Kirkman. Robert Kirkman is the same bearded guy behind a television show you might know called The Walking Dead. The comics ran from December 2005 to April 2006. It starts in an alternate Earth called Earth 2149, where an unknown hero crash lands from another dimension. He comes with a, quote, hunger, which infects the Avengers, the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four, along with basically every other major superhero you can think of. It's intense, and the adventures of the zombie heroes usually have more mayhem than most mainstream comics do in their entire run. It's all about damage and impact, and oh boy does Kirkman deliver on that. Peter Parker eats Aunt May. I'm serious, look it up. After an episode of the Disney Plus series called What If Zombies, there were talks of Disney also creating a spin-off series based on and named after the Marvel zombies, so keep an eye out.
Number 6. The Yeti. This Yeti is relegated to another universe because of the series it appears in, which was intended to be, good for young readers and children, and which was said to exist outside of the main continuity. This Yeti we are talking about here appears in Spidey Super Stories in issue 16. Oh boy. In this team-up book, we see Spider-Man go on adventures that are more kid-friendly when it comes to reading, ideally therefore serving the purpose of helping kids learn how to read, which is important. The Yeti hails from Earth 57780, and while he might seem like a monster by the end of the story, Spider-Man, also of Earth 57780, seems to have ascertained that the Yeti really is not a bad guy, but is just homesick. He's just stealing a lot of ice cream. So he attempts to help the Yeti by getting him safely home so he can be cold again. Yay.
Number 5. Morbius, the living vampire. It's Morbius' world and we're just living in it. He first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man number 101 in 1971. The story goes, in a desperate attempt to save his own life as he suffers from a rare blood disease, Dr. Mike Morbius turns to a cure that uses vampire bat DNA because of course he does. It mutates him into a half-vampire, half-human monster. It's Morbiclock out there, and Morbius was actually initially kind of a bad guy. He fought Spider-Man and Blade before becoming a vigilante justice sort of anti-hero who struggles with the insatiable lust for blood. He's also desperate to find the cure to his vampirism. Honestly, in the comics, Morbius looks way scarier and monstrous than the Laughingstock movie. I think it's one of those things where the cartoon and artistic medium is much better at portraying the monster than Jared Leto is.
Number 4. MCU Gargantos. Gargantos is one of the monsters from Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness that I thought, might be one of the big bads of that movie. Instead, I was wrong, and the beast was used simply as a distraction. Seemingly modeled after the comic book character Shuma-Gorath, Disney and Marvel decided against using the name of that character for copyright reasons, and so instead decided to use a name that solely belonged to them. Enter Gargantos. Although in the comics, Gargantos is less of a magical monster and instead is kinda like your typical multi-tentacled, one-eyed sea monster. In the film, it takes the combined efforts of Sorcerer Supreme Wong and Dr. Stephen Strange to defeat the beast, and Strange even pulls out some magical monster tricks of his own to stop Gargantos. While Gargantos appears in a multiversal film, him being based off of Shuma-Gorath would likely also make him a multiversal monster just straight up.
Number 3. Ghost Rider. Who could forget Johnny Blaze, one of the Ghost Riders set out to hunt down earthly baddies and drag them kicking and screaming to hell where they belong. The legacy of the Ghost Rider began in the pre-Marvel age with a ghostly cowboy who hunted the prairie of the American frontier. But the modern version is a stunt biker, Johnny Blaze, who becomes possessed by the demon Zarathos and becomes a flame-headed skeleton with a cool bike and fancy leather jacket, hunting down bad guys in the name of vengeance. At times, he's the bad guy himself, being the not polished hero that has no problem taking lives. At others, he fights with the other Marvel heroes to take down bigger foes. I mean, he looks badass, can we be honest here, and he's definitely one of my favorite Marvel monsters.
Number 2. What if Conan the Barbarian were stranded in the 20th century? And if you thought Wolverine and Conan fighting was weird, it just gets a whole lot weirder with this issue. However, I guess I should say that it gets a whole lot less weird, as the previous Conan What If we talked about was actually from the second volume of the series, as opposed to this issue that we're talking about, which is actually from the original series. In issue 43 of What If, we learn what would happen if Conan, instead of just coming to the modern day, was stranded there and stuck there. This What If was actually inspired by another fan favorite What If featured in issue 13. What if Conan the Barbarian walked the earth today? In this story, because Conan never gets teleported by lightning home, he becomes a criminal. Because I mean, why not, I guess? He's confused, he doesn't know what he's doing. However, after creating a gang and getting into some trouble, he attracts the attention of the Avengers. But Captain America sees more than just a brute and believes Conan is just misguided, but he has a hero's heart, truly. He offers him a spot on the Avengers, and we actually never learn what Conan decides because the issue ends. Talk about a cliffhanger. I don't know if we'll ever come back. Do we ever come back to that? It's like, will I call him? Won't I call him? And then the Watcher's like, well, I would tell you, but I can't because that's a story for another time. Maybe if we ever do it.
Number 1. Shuma-Gorath. Quote, "Before all was, I was." Before time was, I waited. I fed on the screaming souls of the universe. I drank the spoiled milk of dead stars. I am the emptiness outside all understanding. I am Shuma Gorath, is a pretty sweet way to introduce yourself. His character design is next to none as one of the great old ones who first appeared in a 1972 comic called Journey into Mystery Volume 2. This tentacle monster more so looks like a freak of nature than a typical monster. He's the ruler of hundreds of dimensions and comes to the Earthrealm millions of years ago along with the other old ones. Around 1 million BC, he was banished from Earth by a time traveler sorcerer named Seasneg. It was witnessed by Doctor Strange, who hoped to defeat the Ancient One so his master didn't have to die, but obviously it never really works out like that. But then Shuma Gorath reappears and becomes the main foe of Doctor Strange. While we can get into his whole villain arc with Doctor Strange, I would prefer to look at the other reality he appeared in with Earth 30847. He became an unlikely savior of Earth, and upon accepting that they thought of him as a hero, he ended up hosting a Japanese game show called the Super Monster Awesome Hour, which honestly, like, vibes.
Number 10. Hyperion. Hyperion is basically Marvel's first ever answer to DC's Superman. There are a few different versions of Hyperion from across the Marvel comics, but as a brief summary, originally he was from Earth 712. He was the last surviving member of the Eternals, and he comes to Earth and is raised by a family called the Miltons. He takes the name Marcus Milton. Eventually, he moves to Cosmopolis, becomes a newspaper cartoonist, and joins the Squadron Supreme. Yes, he is basically Superman. There's a story where he does battle with an evil clone version of himself created by the Grand Master. There is also a King Hyperion who basically destroys all the most powerful beings in the universe and takes over the Earth. That's obviously a villain, but it just shows how astronomically powerful this hero can be. The version of Hyperion who has most recently shown up is the Hyperion from Earth 13034. His Earth was destroyed by an incursion and he's pulled to 616. But what are his powers? Well, he is strong enough to hold two colliding universes apart for a short period of time, so there's that. He has super speed, durability, and stamina. He can fly, he has X-ray vision, heat vision, super intellect. I promise this isn't a list of Superman's powers. Number 9. Cosmic Iron Man. Tony Stark as a god with his great sense of humor should be fantastic, but it's honestly a little scary. After Iron Man is imbued with the power cosmic, he becomes the Iron God, and one of the first things he does is do battle with the also power cosmic powered Korvac. These two are literally throwing moons and planets at each other during their fight. That is until Iron God transports Korvac to a destroyed universe and fights him until the cosmic entities show up and take Korvac away, leaving Tony to see what he does next. Iron God's goal is to make the world into a paradise, to fix all of its problems. He knows that his past attempts to do this haven't gone too well and that the other heroes will likely try to stop him. But he can use the power cosmic to do whatever he wants, and since all of his ideas for helping the world were trapped in his mind, he shares his intellect and ideas with the entire population of New York, just to start. This plays out in some interesting ways. A couple stops arguing and begins thinking logically, for one. A kid at a baseball game starts talking about background radiation, and the villain Big Wheel decides to solve traffic issues using quantum mechanics. The only problem is that Tony isn't exactly the kind of guy to fully think things through or consult with others before he does things, and that also transferred to other people.
Number 8. Ultimate Hulk. Let's be real, when I think of multiversal monster versions of the Hulk, I often think of Ultimate Hulk of Earth 1610, aka the Ultimate Universe. Here, Hulk was less a hero and more just, kind of a brute. In fact, at one point, the Ultimates, who are basically this Earth's version of the Avengers, even had to fight against, not with the Hulk. The Hulk would eventually go on to join the Ultimates team, I'll give him that, but let's not forget that he's a cannibalistic beast who also makes some of the most violent threats when he's angry. Even Bruce Banner wasn't as altruistic in this universe, initially hoping to create the next super soldier serum so that he might be able to increase his own strength and power. However, instead he created a Hulk serum, which turned him into the Hulk because he was all about testing that serum on himself. It's even implied that during his first transformation that he may have actually caused the death of Mary and Richard Parker, the parents of Spider-Man. Peter Parker, so yeah.
Number 7. Hercules during Chaos War. Hercules is an incredibly powerful Olympian who is on par with, if not stronger than, Thor. But one of his most powerful moments was during the events of Chaos War when the Chaos King attacked. Amadeus Cho becomes a god, but he's mortal and cannot handle it, so he transfers the power to Hercules. Now with this power, Hercules leads a team against the Chaos King. He's able to fly, teleport, and release energy from his hands and eyes. His strength was amped up to incredible levels. His footsteps created shockwaves, and he was even able to come out on top in a confrontation with the Council of Godheads, which is basically a group made up of the chief deities of all the different pantheons. He could summon Galactus and Eternity against their will, and defeated a Chaos King Zeus who just defeated Galactus with a single punch. He could give others power too, giving all the heroes the power of flight. He could grow to the size of a planet to fight the Chaos King with his fists, eventually defeating him. But to close out the story, Hercules uses his power to undo all the crazy stuff that the Chaos King did, and he became mortal again. But damn, he was powerful. Number 6. Rachel Summers. Rachel here is from the Days of Future Past storyline, and she is another of the mutant children of Jean Grey and Scott Summers. She has access to the Phoenix Force and was raised in the Xavier Institute and becomes the partner of the future version of Franklin Richards. After she was kidnapped by soldiers who had taken out everyone else in her house, Rachel became a mutant hound, using her psionic powers to hunt down other mutants for the authorities. They branded her face with an irremovable pattern of tattoos to mark her as a hound and forced her to wear a leash. Rachel took out mutants, some of which were people she loved. Rachel's grief and shame from what she did as a hound and the deaths of her parents and friends made her a pretty dark character, even after she broke her brainwashing. She's one of the most powerful psychics in the entire Marvel universe, and that's the case before she became the one true Phoenix and had its cosmic powers. As Phoenix, Rachel's abilities are enhanced to their ultimate levels, limited only by her force of will and her imagination. She literally becomes the cosmic entity, the Phoenix. Number 5. Franklin Richards. When Reed Richards and Sue Storm had a child together, a whole bunch of cosmic tomfoolery went on, resulting in Franklin Richards, the baby, being born with powers to alter matter on a universal scale. So in other words, he can basically manipulate reality on a cosmic level, which is an insane amount of power for a kid to wield. He's put mental blocks on himself to help control this power, but that doesn't mean he can't still do a hell of a lot. Some of the things this guy has done include: when all the mutants were destroyed by Onslaught, Franklin resurrected them all and put them in a universe that he just created. When Abraxas killed all the versions of Galactus, Franklin resurrected him. He's also resurrected Galactus and literally made him his herald. Recently, it was revealed that instead of being a mutant, Franklin actually altered every cell within his own body to appear like he had the X gene to fit in a bit more with the mutants. There is even a fan theory that Franklin Richards controls the Marvel Multiverse to stop characters from aging throughout the many years they have been around, and it's honestly possible. Number 4. Doctor Strange. When looking at the rest of the characters on this list, it's kind of hard to see why the heck Doctor Strange is showing up here. And that's fair. Looking at his abilities in the MCU and even the comics past the point of 2009, he's not that strong. But before that time, Doctor Strange was an incredibly powerful character. So powerful that Marvel needed to depower him. He could easily defeat pretty much any foe before this time. So basically, Doctor Strange's only real power is his ability to use magic and magical artifacts. But since he was so good at that, he could basically do anything he wanted to. Flight, time travel, telepathy, shields, astral projection, teleportation, all of these using spells and artifacts. He has survived being close to a star and has caused that star to collapse into a black hole. He has summoned cosmic entities and imprisoned and defeated the In-Betweener. He's altered the fabric of the universe. He's trapped the Beyonder and undone the things the Beyonder had done when he warped reality. He's broken out of a spell cast by the Living Tribunal, and he has even become Death. He's defeated Dormammu, Nightmare, and Shumagorath on a regular basis. It may be surprising that he's on this list, but it shouldn't be.
Number 3. Ruins. Ruins is just the most messed up kind of weird that a multiversal story can be. This comic offers a much darker take on what the world could be like with superpowers. Of course, it is a story by Garth Ennis, so yes, darker is definitely where we're going here. As brutal as Ruins is, well, I kind of love how dark and awful it gets. The series deals with the less fantastical, more literal interpretations of powers and their uses, and how less hopeful civilians and government agencies might react or take advantage of said superpowers. In this world, Quicksilver is just a torso with his limbs moving too fast, causing him problems, so they all had to be amputated. At least that's what's implied, or they just didn't like that he went fast, so they amputated them. The Hulk is an irradiated pile of tumors, which ultimately dies under the weight of his own mutation, and the Silver Surfer ends up driven mad by his own cosmic existence, taking his own life by clawing his own chest open while floating through space. This is a bleak and disturbing world filled with pain and suffering. Not heroes in capes. That's part of what makes it great, and part of what makes it weird, and part of what makes it horrifying.
Number 2. Adam Warlock. First appearing in 1967 in Fantastic Four number 66, Adam Warlock was created by the Enclave, who were experimenting to create a perfect human specimen. This made him super strong, durable, fast, and he can store and use huge amounts of cosmic energy to make him fly, release blasts, and all kinds of things, including cocooning himself to help him heal and regenerate. Now every time he does this though, he actually comes out more powerful than when he went in, and he evolves new powers. He is also able to use quantum magic, which lets him teleport, make force fields, and move at the speed of light, create wormholes, resurrect himself and others, has cosmic awareness, manipulates, removes, and judges the souls of others. He has a lot of powers. He's altered the evolution of beings, he's manipulated matter, turning Thanos into stone, and then he wielded the Infinity Gauntlet. We have had Mutant Jesus, and this guy is basically Space Jesus. And one of his biggest feats is completely embarrassing the hell out of Mephisto, Marvel's most powerful demon, in his own realm. He has accidentally destroyed the entire universe, including all cosmic entities except the one above all who had to fix it all. He does have an evil persona of himself though, called Magus, but we've gone too far, so I can't wait for Disney to completely depower him to make him incredibly lame and boring in the MCU. Number 1. Cosmic Comic Spider-Man. Sometimes Marvel will make a joke character or scenario and it ends up creating a character more powerful than any other character possibly ever. In How to Read Comics the Marvel Way, issues 1-4, the comic itself becomes a character, and it starts off trying to teach the reader how exactly to read comics properly. The comic follows Spider-Man in a conflict with Mysterio, who found the Cosmic Comic, the same one speaking to us, in the basement of the Natural History Museum. It allowed Mysterio to freeze Spider-Man in time in a comic panel, turn inanimate objects to life, and increase his size. Once Spider-Man gets his spider sense back, he realizes the Cosmic Comic is influencing events, so he grabs the comic, thinking it's one of Mysterio's tricks, and tears it in half. After realizing the error of his ways, Spider-Man and Mysterio begin trying to write their own comics to use the Cosmic Comic to make their comics become reality. Thanks to the Cosmic Comic, they end up fighting across time, altering history, and Peter learns of the fact that he is a comic book character, seeing all of his comic book publication history. Taking in all this info, he fuses together with the Cosmic Comic, basically meaning he can control reality within Marvel Comics, which I think is even technically more powerful than multiversal power. He prints the comic he created, which has him saving the day and winning the battle, and it changes reality so that that's the outcome of the fight with Mysterio.
Number 10. Shame of Thrones. Weird, but in a great way. Because for this story we are heading over to the alternate reality belonging to the Little Marvels. Over in the Infinity comic Giant Size Little Marvels issue number 4, we get a glimpse into Dr. Von Doom's lair and his evil game night, which apparently happens every other Tuesday, according to Magneto. However, the whole issue consists of a tangent where the invited villains complain that Doom is the only one who gets to sit in a throne while they game, whereas they're all relegated, to normal seats. Doom argues it is because he's the most accomplished ruler among them all, and that he answers to no one. However, his mom has something to say about that. Vicky? Number 9. What if Sergeant Fury had fought World War II in outer space? I was literally going to just say that to introduce the story, but then of course it's already been said because that's the name of the story. In this comic we get to see what it would be like if, in addition to the general opposition during World War II, there were also aliens involved, who wanted to, of course, invade Earth. As such, the Howling Commandos take to the stars to fight against German World War II soldiers in addition to alien invaders known as the Baytans. Did I also mention that Nick Fury is still smoking throughout this entire issue, even while he's wearing a space helmet? While some things would change in this scenario, it seems others would remain the same. How do you even smoke in a space helmet? That seems like it would be terrible. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more multiversal Marvel lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. The Final Showdown. Mutant X really had a whole series, but for the purpose of this list, we're just going to focus on one of its story arcs that takes place in the alternate reality of Earth 1298, as it was a 32-issue series, so I mean a lot happened. The basic idea here though is that instead of X Factor, we have a non-government or corporate mutant team known as the Six. Havoc in this reality ends up with Madeline Pryor, and the two of them have a child together named Scott. Yeah, it's a little different than 616. Here Maddie does become the Goblin Queen, but like how we have the Phoenix Force, she becomes infected with the Goblin Force and its influence, turning her dark. Initially, Maddie is actually known by her hero mantle, Marvel Woman. As such, Havoc and their son Scotty must fight against the Goblin Queen. After a long build-up where no one is able to stop Madeline, it's revealed that Scotty is able to due to his insane level of power. He rids his mom of the Goblin influence, but also banishes her in the process. Don't worry though, just like in main continuity, Maddie would return here as well. I believe she gets banished to like the center of the earth. It's a weird place, but it's a pretty good place, I would say. Mutant X, should you read it? Nah, I think you should read it. I think you could read it. I don't know if you should, but you definitely could. Number 7. What if the X-Men had lost Inferno? I love this comic, mainly for the panel at the end where Alicia Masters' Storm whispers to her newborn babe, "I love you, baby." I think it might be one of my all-time favorite panels ever, actually. But there is lots of weird stuff to love from this issue, including the fact that Doctor Strange and Rachel Summers also randomly deliver this baby at the end. In this What If, we imagine what would have gone down if the Goblin Queen hadn't been defeated and instead was victorious. One of the things that would have come about, her unleashing the beast within Wolverine and turning him into a villain who devours babies. Also, Rachel becomes trapped and later freed from being a bridal mannequin? I think that's a thing that happens here. That's definitely looks like what's happening. Also, I love Rachel as a bridal mannequin. And how after she's like, "Thanks, my face hurt, too much smiling." Oh, by the way, Doctor Strange, who frees Rachel, he also gets to wear a cool eye patch in this world. Why? Because he's Doctor Strange. He gets an eye patch. I like it. Everyone should have eye patches. I want an alternate reality where everyone has an eye patch. Number 6. Ghost Racers. This is a series that comes from the Battle World pocket dimension that was governed by God Emperor Doom. Just like we had the Thor Corps, here we have the Ghost Racers, which is basically like its own category of racing, creating an organization or like even a company out of that set form, like NASCAR. The Ghost Racers are made up of various ghost riders who of course race one another for Battle World's entertainment. And of course, so wealthy fans can ideally make some funds on the wins and losses of each race. Although all the riders are pitted against one another, and eventually Arcade, who is in charge of them, sends them to take down Robbie Reyes, the current racing champion, eventually they all remember what things were like before Battle World, and they decide to rise up against those that are controlling them. Which I love. Also, I just love the idea of like just a group of racers that are just all ghost riders, and they're like, we race each other for fun. This is what we do now. Ghost Racers. Number 5. What if Wolverine battled Conan the Barbarian? In issue number 16 of the second volume of What If, we get to see what would happen if Wolverine somehow came to the time and lands of Conan and the duo ended up fighting one another. That's basically what What Ifs are for, right? Just seeing people that would not normally fight, and who will win. In order to revive his love, Conan is asked to bring another soul in her place to sacrifice. The soul that he decides to bring is actually Red Sonja, so that's not great because Wolverine, having fought with Red Sonja previously, had basically kind of fallen for her, and he does not agree with what is going on because of his own sentiment. He wants to rescue Sonja, probably because she reminds him of Jean Grey. Honestly, it's pretty weird to me that no one has ever said that like Jean Grey and Mary Jane Watson look similar, considering people have both thought that they looked like Red Sonja in the comics. So do all women with red hair just look the same? Is that the implication here? Or do all three of these women actually closely resemble one another, but we never really acknowledge that like Jean and MJ like look very similar, like weirdly similar? And Red Sonja's in there too. It's like the trifecta of like redheads. In the end, Wolverine takes Conan's hand in a fight that the two have, and the two end up permanently swapping places, with Conan returning to Wolverine's home reality and Wolverine staying in Conan's age. Wolverine finds a happy ending with Sonja. Conan, not so much. He like sees Jean, and then she goes full Dark Phoenix, and then that's the end of that. Number 4. Age of Ultron vs. Marvel Zombies. Another even more bizarre story coming at us from God Emperor Doom's Battle World. This comic was all about the world that existed outside, actually, of Doom's Battle World, known as the Deadlands. And if you didn't like living by Doom's rules, well, you certainly wouldn't like this. But this might be where you would end up. Defy Doom, and this could be a place that he put you. Age of Ultron vs. Marvel Zombies explored these Deadlands that were watched over by Annihilus's insect creatures. And yeah, it's about as wild as it sounds. Around every corner, with the flip of every page, awaits more gore, folks losing their heads, and monsters, monsters, monsters! I think in a world of zombies versus robots, no one really wins. Is that the takeaway here? Also, because this is Battle World, there are lots of appearances of random multiversal characters, such as young Hank Pym, who's kinda like the main character of this, from the past alternate Earth of 51920, and the Pilgrim Punisher of Earth 15513. At least he looks like a Pilgrim Punisher. I like that he still has his skull shirt though. So he's like got the hat, he's got the coat, and he's like still got this like very 80s style looking logo and shirt.
Number 3. Nate Gray. For a guy named X-Man, he's gotta be a powerful character. And he is. Nate Gray comes from the Age of Apocalypse timeline. He was created by Mr. Sinister using the DNA of both Scott Summers, Cyclops, and Jean Grey. There are a few characters who are a child of these two mutants, namely, there's Cable. Now Cable has huge psionic abilities, but because of being infected by the techno-organic virus, almost all of his energy goes towards keeping himself alive. Nate Gray is basically Cable, but without that limitation. When he first came into the 616 reality, he was able to hide himself from Cerebro, which is supposed to be impossible. He is described as being on the same level of Jean Grey harnessing the Phoenix Force, which is one of the greatest threats the X-Men and the world has ever faced, and he is described as an Omega level living god. He can read the minds of others, he can sense the emotions and histories left on objects, he can detect rifts in space and time, he can move into the astral plane where he can see the future, and after he had a bit of practice, he could even increase the power of other mutants. He has cured cancer, destroyed cities on the other side of the Earth during a nightmare, manipulated matter to a cosmic scale, and traveled through space and time. He is basically mutant Jesus. Look at him.
Number 2. Strange Supreme. Strange Supreme is the Dark Doctor Stephen Strange we see as is showcased in the Disney Plus What If streaming series in the season 1 episode, What If Doctor Strange Lost His Heart Instead of His Hands? In this episode, Strange becomes obsessed with getting back Christine Palmer after losing her in a car accident instead of, losing his hands, because Christine was his heart. Get it? Because her death is considered an absolute point in time, the spirit of the Ancient One returns to Strange to remind him that he cannot do anything to bring her back. Strange doesn't like that answer and is like, I'm still gonna do stuff, so he gets split in twain, with one half of him choosing to do whatever it takes to get Christine back, because the Ancient One's like, I'm not gonna let that happen, just cut you in half. This prompts him to turn to the dark arts, absorbing various creatures and monsters from the universe in order to get as much power as is needed to reverse Christine's death. In the end, this Strange of the multiverse becomes more monster than man, defeating his other half by reabsorbing him and breaking the universe to bits when he disregards all warnings and brings Christine back to life anyways once more. Doesn't even work out well because Christine's like, dude, you're like super evil, I'm like not here for this. Number 1. Marvel. Even saying the title sounds just like an experience. I don't even know where to start with Marvel because this continuity feels so just like non-existent here. There's no through line. The story is meant to be about Kal AOL, a play on Kal-El, a kid from the future who is sent back in time to save the world and to save himself. In the future, you see the world is about to end. Fortunately though, that doesn't happen. While Al doesn't have any powers, he somehow is moderately successful as a hero. After the world doesn't end, his parents send the time machine they originally sent him through back in time to pick him up. But Al decided to travel back in time to the beginning instead. There he meets maybe God, and also learns that Wolverine evolved from an otter and dinosaurs can talk. With every issue in this story, you ask yourself, how can it get any weirder? And then it somehow does that. Also, what's up with these covers? They're almost completely unrelated to the plot of the comics. I guess sexy ladies sell comics, and so who needs a plot was the thought process with Marvel. At least with the covers. And maybe with the inside of it as well, because I don't really know what the plot is about.